evening our program is Show Me the Money. And all of us are always looking in terms of show me the money. And with the way the stock markets are going, I know we're hoping somebody will show us the money in many ways. But the guests we have this evening are Wyatt Stewart and Jackie Lovelace Johnson. I'll just give you a little brief bio of them, and you have it in your program as well. I'll start with Jackie Lovelace Johnson. Was appointed as chair of the Lovelace Respiratory Research Institute and board of directors in '92. The Lovelace Respiratory Research Institute is a private biomedical research organization dedicated to improving public health through research on the prevention, treatment, and cure of respiratory disease. The institute continuing the research begun by her great-uncle, Dr. William R. Lovelace, and her father, Dr. W. R. Randy Lovelace, more than 50 years ago. She graduated from the University of Colorado in Boulder. She worked in Washington, D.C. She was a press secretary. She moved to Denver in 1971 to run the re-election campaign of Congressman Tim Wirth. Following his re-election, she joined the staff of Colorado Magazine and Colorado Business Magazine, becoming editor of both before leaving to start her own publishing company. She moved with her husband to Kansas City in 1985, and she held board positions with the Friends of the Zoo, serving as president from 95 to 98. She's also a fellow with the Nelson Atkins Art Museum, a member of the Junior League, and chaired the first fundraiser for the Kansas City Zoo, which has turned into the largest fundraiser in the city. She was elected to the City Council of Mission Hills, Kansas, and served as finance chair for Congressman Dennis Moore, and she served actually as his fundraiser coordinator for over 3 years. She's also helping with Governor Kathleen Sebelius. She's married, and they have one son. Now, about Wyatt Stewart. He's a political consultant and a fundraiser, and he served in the United States Navy from 57 to 60. He graduated with a master's degree from Ohio State in 1966. He served from 75 to 94 as the Director of Finance and Administration for the National Republican Congressional Committee. Since 1978, he's also served as President and Chair of the Board of Wyatt Stewart and Associates. He has served as a fundraising consultant to the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation, the Gerald Ford New Leadership Committee, the National Republican Congressional Committee, and the Republican National Committee America 2. Fund for the Capitol Visitors Center. He has raised in total funds that exceed $1 billion. I had to think about that one. He has served as a trustee to the Heritage Foundation. He's a member of the National Organization on Disability. He is currently a member of the Capitol Hill Club in Washington, D.C., and Executive Committee and Finance Chairman for the D.C. Republican Committee. He serves as a delegate for the Reagan campaign, and in 1988 and 92, Bush 41 campaigns, and served on the National Finance Committee for the Bush 43 campaign in 2000. He also served as an alternate delegate for the 96 Dole campaign, the Bush-Cheney campaign, and the 2008 McCain-Palin campaign. He and his wife, Renee, have 2 children. We're going to talk about Show Me the Money, and also in terms of just how important the money is, where it comes from, and the people who give it. Before I turn the podium over to Bill Lacey, director of the Dole Institute, to visit with our 2, I just want to remind you, please turn off your cell phones. The other thing is, one question, just ask the question. I know you have lots you want to say, and I'm sure it would be interesting. Just ask the question so they can answer. Limit yourself to one question. And one of the things we said before that many people commented on last time, especially in election year when people get very heated, let's be civil. Let's be respectful of each other, because our mission here is to make sure that you get to hear what our guests have to say. If you disagree, we disagree respectfully, but most of all, it's the civility that's extremely important. All of us want it, and we try our best to encourage that we do just that. With that, I'm going to turn this program over to Bill Lacey so that you can enjoy our 2 guests this evening, Wyatt Stewart and Jackie Lovelace Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Can you guys hear me okay? Both you guys hot now?
We're on.
Okay. I think I'm on.
Okay, yep, you're on. We very much appreciate all of you coming out tonight, and Wyatt and Jackie, appreciate your time very much too. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into fundraising.
Originally, it was mentioned that I went to Denver to help run a congressman's campaign and was always on the journalistic side of those efforts, dating back to being a press secretary for the Senate Interior Committee. But when I got there, no one was willing to go out and raise the money. And I thought, well, I don't care. I'll go give it a whirl. And what was wonderful about it was that you meet hundreds and thousands of people on a level that you never would otherwise, regardless of what your position with a campaign is. So I knew I loved it and just continued on from there. So I encourage those of you who are in journalism, don't overlook the fundraising side of it because they piggyback very nicely on one another.
Well, I kind of got involved in fundraising when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Memphis, and the fellow who was head of the United Way wanted to do United Way campaign on campus, and I was a vice president of student government, was asked to do that when I was a sophomore, and it went very well, and he kept asking me to do it again and again, so I did. And when it came time to graduate, this fellow, Steve Nelson, who was the head of the United Way in the Mid-South area, said, you've got a pretty good knack for this. Why don't you go to graduate school? There are a couple of 3 schools, I think it was maybe Boston College, Stanford, Ohio State, that offered programs that fit the fundraising mode in graduate school. And I made it very clear, I don't have the money to do anything but go to work and feed myself and take care of it. And he said, well, let's see if we can get something worked out. And we did. My undergraduate fraternity paid for books and housing. The school, he was able to get a teaching assistantship for me. And I was able to get basically full funding to go to graduate school, fortunately, at Ohio State University. And my undergraduate fraternity had said, if we'll do all of this, but you've got to give us 1 year of your time to raise the money for our 100th anniversary celebration at the University of Virginia. And at some point in the process of traveling with former Governor Horig of Iowa, who was chairman of the foundation of the fraternity, and Everett Dirksen, who was at that time the honorary chairman, we ended our sessions at Washington, D.C., fundraiser. And afterwards we had dinner, and they said, you really ought to think about getting involved in helping Republican candidates raise funds to be elected in the from Washington, but be headquartered here from all over the country. So I ended up doing that, and one thing led to another, and the first thing you know, I was doing a lot of campaigns, Senate races, House races across the country, and then I had an opportunity to go to work at the National Republican Campaign Committee. That was in 74, 75. I was there for 17 or 18 years. In the process of being there, I started had the permission to start my own business. I had then got the Statue of Liberty of Ireland, Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation became a major client of mine. It was a 10-year project to raise $385 million. We probably raised somewhere in the area of $500,000 for the Republican Party in the time I was there. Cumulative funding over the years in excess of $1 billion. And it's been a wonderful time for me. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I don't think a better feeling at the end of each day knowing whether you've succeeded or you've failed. In many instances, you don't succeed in fundraising, but the ability to keep moving forward and keep trying to obtain the goal of reaching the financial rewards that are there for your clients is well worth the time and effort to be spent.
One of the things that's really unique that I've always thought about fundraising is you're judged by an objective standard in fundraising, whereas on the political side of a campaign, up until Election Day, you never really are judged. But you guys are judged every day, depending upon what your numbers are.
Well, that's true. You're held accountable, but hopefully you're not the only person standing there with the bag. It's true, and sometimes you fall short of your numbers. Sometimes you go way over them.
I've always said, if you're afraid of failure, don't be in the fundraising business.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Because there's more failures than there are successes on a daily basis, but long range, the successes end up being well beyond the failures. So
I don't think I've ever had a failure where someone would have said you're fired.
Oh no, I've never had that happen. But at the end of each day, when I've got a goal to meet, I haven't always met them.
Right.
That's pretty much
That's
what
true.
Speak a little bit about why, based on your experience, why people give money to political causes and political candidates.
Good.
Passion. Without question. Passion would be high on the list. And then in political campaigns, clearly issues. People are not driven by how much money they give necessarily or how much money that candidate raises. They're driven by, and that's how you raise money. I come to you because I know you're interested in an issue that my candidate represents. That's the sell. And if you don't believe in it, most likely you're not going to give. There are other incidences that are much more comfortable, easier. Let's just say somebody's running for a second or third term. It's a different conversation. You don't even talk about the issues anymore. You just say, good to see you. How about that $2,300? It's time. Love you. And that's how it goes, fortunately, with someone who's a seasoned politician.
I agree with most of what you've said. There's no question that most people, particularly in the political process, give because it's something that they believe in. They sincerely think that cause or that candidate is going to make a difference in their lives, and that it's going to eventually be beneficial to them to support those types of efforts. That candidate or that particular organization that's raising funds for particular issues. That's what's driving them to give. Another reason to give is for fear of what might happen, and fear drives a lot of fundraising causes. What might happen if enough contributions aren't made to combat the things that might result as of not being successful on the other side.
Now, Wyatt, you worked at one point, actually before I ever got to know you, worked for Richard Viguerie. Mm-hmm. So you saw kind of firsthand, he was the father of direct mail in the United States. He really brought it to the conservative movement. It really powered the conservative movement and the Republican Party for years. Talk just a little bit about how that transpired and your own experiences, and then I'm going to lead into kind of what's going on today on that front.
I had every element of fundraising I was really on top of, with the exception of direct mail or direct marketing, so to speak. And when I came to Washington, I ended up with a political firm that was the masters of direct marketing, direct mail. And this Richard Viguerie had this concept that the quickest and easiest way to elect candidates to Congress and to the Senate and to raise money at the national level for funding those kind of campaigns was going to be through the mail, and in particular to be able to target states where $1 million would win a statewide race and $100,000 to $150,000 would be enough money to win a congressional race. Today you can't even imagine that being the case. But $1 million in 75, 76, 77, that was a Senate campaign. California was the first one to break $1 million. And maybe $1.5 million, but we were able to fund, and in particular, he had 7 states in the West that he felt we could gain control of over a 6-year period of time. Nevada, New Mexico, all Democrat states basically, Utah at the time. And we were involved in 6 of those races, and we didn't win but one of those races the first year, but we spent the next 5 years making certain that the record of the incumbent was made available to everybody in the state, and we won 4 of the 5 that were left in the next election. So it took a 6-year period to do that, but ongoing, continuing to do that, and we were able to come back. But it doesn't. Most candidates run more than once before they win. All of us know campaigns that have at least Newt Gingrich 3 times before he finally won his first election in Georgia. So persistence, continuing to do that was important. But use of mail was the conduit for at least 10 or 15, maybe 20 years that drove the Republican Party in local campaigns at the national level. And still today, the national committees, if most of you, or those of you who have given to the Republican National Committee, still get probably more mail than you think you should be getting some days. But it still is a major factor as far as the Republican Party is concerned.
Yeah, and what was the average dollar contribution that you'd see at in the party committees back, say,
then
15
it was
years ago?
It's when I first started, maybe $22, $23, and within a 20-year period, it might have gotten to 28 or 29. But it was a time after President Nixon was supposedly raising all the money for the party with $100,000 contributions for selling, so-called, which was not the case in most instances that I know of anyway, ambassadorships and one thing and another. And my approach was that so-called fat cat image had to be changed. And the only way to do that was to appeal to millions of people, asking them to become supporters with an annual membership of maybe $25 a piece. And we were able in I guess 3 or 4 years to take a $3 million budget, $8 million for the 3 committees, $3 million for the Congressional Committee, but expand that over 3 or 4 years to almost $100 million budgets with over 1.5 million donors. And that really became the base of the Republican Party's fundraising, and expanded to the point that even today, I guess there are probably 10 or 11 million regular donors to the Republican Party at the national level through the mail.
And that technology was really critical. It started before Reagan, but it really kind of...
in 1980...
1981, 82, 83 is when it went crazy.
The base was there, but when Reagan became president, it just was another... We did kind of an interesting story when Reagan and Ford were in the middle of a heated primary. I had the thought that if there was some way to get the two of them to sign one letter jointly, that you'd get the conservatives and the moderates together and you'd raise a lot of money. Well, we didn't get that done. Laxalt was a little nervous about recommending to Reagan. But what we did do, we got a letter from each of them and put it in the same package. With the first sentence, which said, there are very few things that we agree on, but on this one we do, and that's the need to help elect Republican members to the House of Representatives. In the event one of us is president, we'll have the support to get the legislation we want done. And we probably mailed 20 million pieces of that letter, those 2 letters combined, in what was one of the more successful combined efforts, I think, that the party ever did.
But now the leading technology is something that the Democratic Party has done a better job of. It started really more with Howard Dean, but Senator Obama has really turned it into an art form, and that's raising money through the internet.
It's changed the face of fundraising. And we were having this discussion in terms of the Republicans have been so successful in the last 16 years, really, raising money. I think the Democrats were asleep at the switch on all sorts of levels, but the young element came into play, and that young element represented what to do with this incredible technology that we have available to us. And Howard Dean did kick it off. It was a phenomenon that no one had ever heard of or expected. And now you have Obama, who has 2.5 million emails at his click away, and has the ability, when anything happens, instead of using the mail or using letters or using phone calls, let's say this economic crisis, he has the ability to shoot out a short email to a constituency that he knows is interested in his views. To begin with, they're engaged, and he'll ask for small contributions, very different from what we used to do. Those people then have the ability to continue to give. So the phenomenon of being able to reach 2.5 million people in seconds is pretty impressive. And he cornered that technology early.
And at a cost that is relatively nothing.
Yeah.
As opposed to direct mail, where postage alone at the first class rate's 42 cents, I think, now, and even at the non-profit, which you can't, but at the bulk rate is 25 cents. And when you can reach a person for 1 penny at that level, and Obama, I personally sent a $10 contribution in just to see how I'd be treated. There's rare, if there's a day that goes by that I don't get a fundraising piece from Obama, I'd be shocked. Every day, every single day. And they're issue-driven to some degree, but there's always at least one or two appeals for funds. Click here for a contribution. And boom, it comes up, it's easy. Click here for this amount or this amount. It's very easy to do.
When you think about advertising to reach the public, you know, they have to do it. It's most people's only opportunity to put a face with a name and get the feel for that person.
Yeah.
With email, you shoot out an email, there's a video component to it. You see that person speaking to the issue that they're concerned about. So it's nothing short of phenomenal compared to what we've been through for the last 20 years.
We've got to get on the boat. And we as you were saying, we were so far ahead at every step of the way in terms of technology. And we
talking about we being the Republican
Party. You're right. And we were not on the ball. We were either, I think, a little bit lazy, to be honest with you, and felt we were in good shape from a fundraising standpoint. And the fact was, we weren't. But that too will change, I think, sometime in the very near future. So,
I'm curious from a kind of a philosophical point of view what the two of you think about this. I mean, everybody talks about message, everybody talks about the debates, everybody talks about what's going on the internet. Is money as important in politics as it used to be?
Oh, yeah. I don't know, many of you might not recall the name Jesse Unruh, but Unruh was the Speaker of the House in California when Reagan was the governor out there, and he always, when he did a lot of lecturing at colleges and universities and political science departments, and he made it very clear that money was the mother's milk of politics, and indeed it is the force that drives the process, regardless of what we want to think. And without it, you're not going to be that successful. Obama has been able to create an atmosphere that wasn't based on plans. It wasn't based on specifics to try to make this happen. There was just an outflowing of response to a group of people who knew how to use the internet and believed in what the issues were that he was supporting. And he didn't send solicitations, but there's not a day goes by that as I said earlier, that I don't get a message from Obama. And in that message is always an appeal for money. And the day after McCain had a great 500,000 donors. Obama had a million that same day after the Republican convention, the day after the Republican convention. So it's a force to be reckoned with, and you kind of touched on it. We talked about it earlier. My concern as a Republican is that there's 2.5, and by election day there'll be 3 million names that Obama will have to use at his disposal for any issue if he becomes president, to contact people by congressional district over the internet saying, I need your support to get this legislation passed. Send an email to your congressman, to your senator, and let them know that you support this issue. So it's going to go way beyond the fundraising appeal, in my opinion, and a major impact on the political process way beyond fundraising.
Well, I think the flip side of that is that you've had the benefit of that all these years, the Republicans have, and I would say that that's special interest and lobbyist groups that raise an inordinate amount of money, and then that's when there's an issue that comes up, that's your huge base, just as large a base as being able to reach 2.5, 3 million people, but they happen to be individuals.
Not even close. Absolutely incorrect statement.
Oh, I think
there is
the
no
money
question.
issue,
The amount of money that's raised by lobbyists, by the Democrats, is within 3% of what the Republicans raise. Look at the records. Go to the FEC reports and take a look, and you'll see. The Democrats, since they've had the majority, have raised equally amounts of money from lobbyists and big industry as the Republicans are raising. Now, all you got to do is go look at the record.
My point is that you had a constituency there.
Our constituency for fundraising for 30 years was a person who gave an average contribution of $30 or less.
No, I'm not making my point clear. There was a group, if there are a group of lobbyists, let's just say it's energy companies, and the energy companies had contributed at whatever level, whether it was $1, $1 million. That was your constituency. You had that base to reach out to if there was legislation that came up. The reverse is happening now, in my opinion, with these individuals. He can turn to his constituency and say, it's not special interests, it's not lobbyists, it's the people.
It's not special interests on the part of Obama? Are you kidding me?
In my opinion.
The labor unions, not only the labor unions, the two people in his campaign, Johnson and Raines, who ruined Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
How long do we have to be civil?
Well, I think it makes it interesting.
I think I understand Jackie's point. I think what she's saying, and I think you'll identify with this, is that direct mail was that tool for the Republican Party. And I remember, as a matter of fact, after leaving, the Congressional Campaign Committee and moving over to the White House, we would call upon you guys and we'd say, the president would like to sign a letter, but he'd like a message about this or that or something else. And so now the Internet is kind of working the same way. So, but now, Jackie, you've been involved, since Tim Worth's campaign and probably before that, but now you raise money for Congressman Moore, Governor Sebelius. I mean, how important do you think has the importance of money changed over the years?
Just the need for more. I mean, it's crazy how much we think we need to spend on these races, but you're caught up in it.
It's a never-ending process.
I know.
It never
if
seems
you heard Wyatt say the statistics about California, everyone knew what Arnold Schwarzenegger spent. Most people knew what John Corzine spent to
$70 million.
Virtually buy his seat in the Senate and then as governor. Those are huge numbers that are funded by the individuals. We're now faced with these races that if you're going to get on television and you're going to be in front of people, the only way to do it is with money. And he who has the most money that last critical 2 to 3 weeks before an election has an enormous leg up. If they can buy the time on television and radio, you're ahead of the game. And there's no other way to compete.
Do we spend too much money on politics?
Yes.
I'm a free spender in terms of the marketplace. We spend more money on popcorn in theaters than we do on campaigns to elect the chairman of the board and the board of directors of an operation that spends trillions of dollars. And my personal feeling is that we should probably allow for unlimited contributions with a daily report at the end of each day. And if the individuals that are voting don't like what that person took for money, vote them out of office. Get rid of them.
One thing that I would like younger people to look at, and that's the incredible amount of money spent at the Republican convention and the Democratic convention. I've been a delegate. I don't know if any of you went to any of these conventions. Look at the money that's spent. You're no longer voting on nothing happens at that convention anymore in terms of the candidate. And you go to the convention, and then after the convention, you go out at 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock. There are parties till 2 in the morning. And these are parties so over the top. Both parties, Republican, Democrat. You may change the face of who the entertainment is. But that's, in my opinion, where astronomical dollars are foolishly spent. I would like to see young people come in and say, this doesn't make sense, the convention structure doesn't make sense, let's stop spending all of that money and figure out how to do this.
Based upon the experiences that both of you have had at a variety of different levels, if you spend the most money, should you win?
No. I think there have been examples where people have run campaigns on what we would call a bare bottom, basically, budget, and have been able to win. But money is still a major factor in victories in terms of, particularly, I think, at the federal level. I think money is more the driver of the process than it is at some of the more local election.
At the national level, I don't think there's any way out of it. Local races, grassroots still works.
Door to door.
You can still do it.
What were we saying? The young man here that's running for the
Tyler.
state legislature, Tyler? He's going to knock on 8,000 doors in the next month and a half, right? Up in Johnson County? Right.
But you can do it. You know, when I ran for city council in Mission Hills, there were no women, there were no Democrats. And it's just a little city council. I mean, there are no businesses there. The issues are more real estate issues. But I went to every door. I had a ball. I had my son out, my husband out, I had my signs. I did one mailing, but it was a total grassroots effort. And that's what everyone said when they came out to vote. You know a smattering of people, obviously, because it's your neighborhood. But you don't know them all, and that's what they responded to. It still works. I raised $200. Sorry, Tyler. Tyler needs $2,000. That shows you the difference of times.
Now, we actually do have public funding for the presidential campaigns that's available. And Senator Obama chose not to do the public funding after saying that he would not do that. But I'm curious, is that going to create a financial advantage for him in the campaign?
Sure. I don't know how we can avoid an argument here.
No,
you can argue as long as you're civil.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm puzzled, to be honest with you, about what that effect's going to be, and I don't think we'll really know that until the last 2 weeks of the campaign, and you begin to, and somebody will do this, somebody will compare on a daily basis what the percentages are, how much money is being spent, and whether or not those last 3 or 4 days of television media buys are going to make a difference, because I got to believe that at some point there's going to be nothing but total saturation.
Well, what's the number that McCain gets?
84 million? 87 million, I think.
87 million. In answer to your question, I think, sure, it makes an impact, because that leaves Obama open to, and he's shown that he has the ability to raise more money. Your comment about how he changed his mind, I think he changed his mind because as long as you have an opportunity for swift boat advertising to come into play, that's how he's going to compete in that arena. If you do campaign finance reform to stop that sort of thing where they are accountable.
Said, I'm going to spend whatever I have. That's all I'm saying.
But I think that was the decision. I think that's why he made that decision.
Wasn't that actually a wise decision on his part? Just like McCain's decision to stick with public funding relieved a lot of burden on his campaign and really allows the Republican Party committees to raise a lot of money that they can channel into voter turnout operations.
Exactly. Sure. That's correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this, both of you. If you'd been advising John McCain, would you have told him to take the public money or to raise the money privately?
I would have probably told him to take the public money and allow the National Party to raise. It's going to be interesting to see how much the National Committee ends up raising and spending. That's a tough one, but I think when you got someone like Obama who has a spigot that's open without even having to turn the faucet, it's awfully hard to compete with that. And I think the guarantee at this point, I haven't seen it to be making a major difference. It's going to be that last 10 days it's probably going to really find out whether or not it's going to make the difference or not.
Jackie, if you were a Republican and you had advised John McCain, what would you have told him?
Take the money. Take the money. I was going to look at, I've raised money for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Democratic governors. And I was looking, just so you all know, maybe you all do know, but I'm looking for the number you can give to those. Is it 25,000?
27. I think it's 27.
Okay, but those are the numbers you're looking at. So if McCain has he has public funds, and then the Republican National Committee becomes his other vehicle for raising big money, because individuals can only give the $2,300 in the primary and in the general. So then you turn to your national committees, and the Republican Senatorial Committee, the National Committee can all give. individuals can contribute each cycle 27. Don't hold me to those numbers, but it's about $27,000.
28.5, I think, total, but
So
not to one.
that's a lot of money. So I would look at the odds. What are my odds in getting a whole lot of people to give $25,000 on top of what they've already given to the party? That's not easy. It's not an easy sale at all. So if I were personally involved in it, I'm setting myself up for a little bit of a defeat here. I'd rather go the other route. Take the money.
Well, let me ask you guys this. In the end, Obama's campaign will probably, I would guess, in the last 60 days, post-convention, will spend more than McCain's campaign.
No question.
But won't McCain's campaign and the Republican Party committees probably spend as much or more than Obama's campaign and the Democratic Party committees?
I think that's going to be. I don't think that can happen.
You think it's going to be more balanced?
I think Obama's going to outraise by a lot.
Substantial.
In the last couple of 3 weeks, I think he'll not only continue to raise the money, I think he will have raised more money than he's going to be able to spend in any kind of a frugal way. I just think the money's going to be overwhelming at that point. Although the last week and a half, those figures have dropped back.
Yeah,
have dropped back some.
And this economic crisis is not helping that effort with anyone, on any party, any race. So,
let's shift gears, and we're going to get to your questions in just a few minutes. But let's shift gears. What's harder, raising money or making sure that it's spent the right way? What's harder, actually raising the money or then making sure that it's spent and utilized efficiently?
Well, I'll go in and you have your shot, but as a fundraiser, I don't believe the fundraiser should ever be involved in the policy-making part of the campaign. However, I think it's important to have the relationship with the political people so that they understand the fundraising process and that they just aren't out there wasting money at the end of the campaign. Obama could end up with a lot of money left over, in my mind. I think he could end up with a lot of money left over, which he can use in the future for any cause of which he wishes. And if he's a wise person, he can saturate the marketplace and still have a lot of money left to do a lot of other things with. McCain won't have that luxury. But I do believe getting the money from the federal process and what the party can raise will more than, in my mind, adequately, hopefully be the case anyway, adequately fund what he needs to get done.
I agree. If you're a fundraiser, you shouldn't be involved in how it's being spent. What you need is for them to come to you and tell you what the budget is, why you're trying to raise that money.
And for what you're raising.
And they're accountable. Someone has to be accountable. If you were a fundraiser and you saw things just running amok, you would say something. You would stop.
Well, I think there is a responsibility of a fundraiser to encourage proper management of the funds, but certainly not to have any control over that process.
So there's an accountability, but you certainly have it would be absurd to think we could wear all those different hats, that you could focus on where this money's going now that you have it in. You need some other bird for that.
But I'm sure that, or I'm guessing that both of you would feel that, for you to be effective as fundraisers, there has to be an effective other side to the campaign that's providing budget and cash control and those kinds of things.
I don't get involved in campaigns from a fundraising standpoint unless there's a financial plan that's provided that explains where the money's going to be spent.
Right.
And it's so much easier to ask for money when you can explain or show on a piece of paper what that contribution is going to be paying for. And have some validity to the fact that we're not just raising money. There's a budget, there's a business plan, so to speak, political plan, business plan. And I've always approached these campaigns basically as a business in terms of funding and then hopes on the management side in terms of managing the funds in a very responsible way. And I think those of us who've been doing this long enough, I think we get that kind of response from our clients most of the time.
I do too.
Okay. Just one more question from me. Talk a little bit about the different components of a finance plan. I mean, what are the areas that right now Senator McCain and Senator Obama are both raising money from, and to speak to kind of the components, like mail, internet, events, personal solicitation, all those kinds of things.
But McCain right now is really getting into the internet process pretty a lot bigger than I thought he would be, to be honest with you. And I think it's become competitive among people who use the internet. And there are a lot of people on the internet, that Republicans, that say, I'm going to send something just to be doing. But mail is still the driving force for John McCain. There are millions of pieces of mail. And the advantage of that, to a large degree, for him is that that's also voter turnout. I mean, I would never at this point in the game be raising money with direct mail without including a major voter turnout and a participatory process involved in those types of mailings. And it could be done on the email. The stuff that I've seen from Obama has not included a lot of get out the vote type thing. I would assume that'll probably happen down the road.
There's a big ground.
We'll have to wait and see.
No, I think Obama, I would say the difference in terms of what McCain's strategy is right now and Obama's would be he did not take the $84 million, which means he has to go out, and not that McCain doesn't, I'm not saying that, but there was that chunk of money that came in, which means that Obama has to be out at fundraisers. So he's out asking for those $2,500 contributions, or $2,300, and all of those components have to be in place. We focused on the internet, but those of you who live here, I mean, how many of you have hosted an event in your house, or given money to a candidate
Raise your
here?
hand, I'd like to know.
Yeah, I mean, if you attended something that someone asked you to and gave money, the bottom part of that would be how many of you have gone to pick up a sign and now you have to pay for signs to put in your yard. All of those elements have to take place. The big fundraisers with a star, like Obama just had with Barbra Streisand. I forget how many. I mean, it was extraordinary how many people showed up at that. Then you have the houses all across the country that are hosting those fundraisers, and he's not there. Or you have the ones where he is there, and then it's a higher dollar figure. Or you bring in a senator or a congressman that someone wants to see. So all of those components have to work all of the time together. But I think the strategy for Obama was he's going to stay out on the street working those fundraisers as hard as he has from the onset.
Okay. Well, we're going to open it up to questions and answers now. I see that Tom and it looks like Peter both have cordless mics. If you have a question, please raise your hand. One of them will come to you, and then I'd ask you to stand and state your question.
There's one, two.
I'm wondering, as you think back over your fundraising experiences, have there been times when you've been asked to do fundraising when you had questions about the integrity of the candidate and therefore decided not to participate? Or has your fundraising experience been purely a business venture?
From my standpoint, I can think of only once when I was involved in and it wasn't a political campaign, to be honest with you, with an account or a client that I didn't feel comfortable being involved in helping them fund the cause and or for their efforts that they were, and that lasted about 3 months and I was out of there. So I would not participate in raising funds for something that I didn't personally feel comfortable doing. That's been my approach to it anyway.
My only hesitation would be if I felt, and I have had that experience, that someone's not working hard enough for their money. If I'm going to ask you to give me $25 or $2,500, I want you to be confident that that candidate is going to work hard for you. So if a candidate doesn't, and it happens, not everyone's a great campaigner. Not everyone has the energy for this. I mean, think about it. Think about what your life is like running for these offices. And I think a classic example, I don't want to say Claire McCaskill didn't work hard for her money, but she didn't go to rural America. And so when you ask the question, do we figure out where you're spending the money or what you're doing, we're raising the money. She forgot this whole component. I mean, they said it afterwards. We were blindsided by it. We didn't see it. We forgot about it. Well, that's irritating. You have to have that person out there that's going to pound every stone and have the strategy that is a winning strategy that makes you confident about the investment you made.
Let me ask a follow-up on that real fast. Have either, and don't name names here, but have either of you ever been involved in a campaign or any kind of a fundraising activity where the money was being not spent illegally or unethically, but just so inefficiently and so unproductively that you thought about maybe I ought to get out of this?
The one time, and I got out of it.
No.
But that was really, I mean, there are times when I think bad judgment calls might have been made in expenditures, but it wasn't something that was sloppy or purposely done. Mistakes were made in terms of management decisions at times to spend money on something that maybe I would have thought would have been wiser to do a different way. But I never had any real major problems with the way money that I was helping raise was being spent. And I think it speaks somewhat to the fundraiser's responsibility to raise the money and knowing that you're working with somebody that's going to be a responsible person in terms of spending it.
Right.
So when you're picking your clients, if you have the luxury of doing that, you kind of want to be sure they're the kind of people that are going to get out there and hustle and do the things that you'd like to see them in terms of managing the funds that you're helping to raise.
Okay. Do we have a question over here? I know we had one back over here, sir.
Yep.
I know you spoke about it briefly earlier, but would both of you please talk a little bit more about 529 plans and how this form fits into the overall picture of campaigning? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? And if you do think it's bad, what would it take to get it disallowed? And do you think it will be
Referring
disallowed?
to 529.
Is it 527?
Yeah.
527?
Independent expenditures you're
Yeah.
talking about? Go ahead and let's kind of work together on this because I have mixed emotions at times about it. But the courts have pretty much said that they're legal. And it looks like we're going to be living with it whether we want to or not at times.
I was hoping someone wouldn't ask that question tonight. And I tried to do a little research, and it wasn't very effective. But
It's not easy.
I think what we want, meaning we, the American people, we want accountability. And so if you have something just come out of, and they're always going to come out of left field. You know, they're not going to be in your face from the onset necessarily, unless you consider Ralph Nader or someone like that, but he doesn't have money. I just think people want you accountable. You can kill people with these, and we've seen it. So I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how you control it. I think the legislation is very ineffective. I've tried to read it again today before coming here, and I can't get through it. I read the synopsis. I can't understand it. And so I go back to little sound bites that help me get through the course of the day, trying to do what I'm supposed to be doing and not sound foolish. But I don't have an answer for you. I'm sorry. I think the examples of, George Soros would be one of the best examples of that everyone would know.
Well, it's a process that I think most people involved from a professional standpoint as a candidate would just as soon not be there. Mm-hmm. And we don't. I think the legal aspects of it have been defined, and the courts have ruled that you can't prevent it. Right. If someone wants to do it, that's their constitutional right to do it.
My only answer to that question is strategy. I think if you have, and we've all seen this, if you are a candidate and you're accused of something you didn't do, you spend the next week explaining why you didn't do it. And it takes real guts to just disregard that and go on with your message. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't. So I think the only way to effectively combat these, and again, I don't know how you do that, but just ignore them and move on. Because it doesn't
were it
fit
not
in
for the
anything.
meeting, you probably could ignore it
Right.
and move on. But the process of continuing with the media and the free time that they give what's going on creates more of a
But
problem.
it doesn't fit in with any of the financial regulations that are in place, and so they're just playing a different ball game, and it's an untenable situation. I wish I had an answer.
I think it's an excellent question. I think the word that you used, Jackie, is right, accountability. Isn't it, and here's how I would approach it, isn't it kind of a bad idea that we allow individuals to give unlimited sums of money to organizations that they create that are totally unaccountable, while we restrict the amount of money you can give to the two parties, which are more accountable?
That's the wrong-headed. You're absolutely right about that, in my opinion. The structure of the legality of the process is, in my opinion, why shouldn't the parties, the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, why shouldn't they have the capacity to give and fund those campaigns instead of independent expenditures committee who have nothing to do with the campaign, who in many cases do more damage to the person they think they're trying to help or the candidacy they're trying to help than they do help. And my feeling would be what you're saying, that they should have the right to spend. The party should be able to do that, not outside activities.
The Democratic National Committee set up roughly like the Republican National Committee, right? There's a chairman and a committee man and a committee woman from each state. So you automatically...
They have two, where we have one.
Okay, so you automatically, though, you have people in your state that you can get on the phone, if you know them, and call and say, why are you spending this money this way? And with a 527, you have no local accountability or connection at all. Other questions tonight? We have one right here. Looks like we got 2 or 3 questions on this side. We have plenty of time, so.
Well, my friend sitting next to me, one of the things she said is, it goes on so long. And when you talk about how much money, I'm a former teacher, and I think about a little bit of money. It bothers me, all the money that's spent on the campaigns. I just have to be honest. And if it was shorter, I'm very politically minded, but I'm tired of watching. I'm turning it off now, because even if it's somebody I really like, because it's the same old thing. And it seems to me we could spend less money and do it less amount of time, because frankly I think the American public is worn down to a nub. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I mean, I actually wasn't the one that said it. But I've been thinking about it the whole time, and all the money you're spending, and I keep thinking about other things that we could spend that money on other than listening to talking heads for a year.
So is your question...
My question is, how can we shorten the amount of time that a candidate is allowed to campaign? And then we would spend less money. I would like to see a limit.
I agree with you.
How could we?
There are 2 ways to do it. One is to pass legislation that constricts the time and or the parties, the 2 parties, some way determined that we're going to limit. I think the parties would have the right to do that. In my mind, that's the only. I don't know how.
You're not alone. You're not alone. I mean,
is there a way we can, as a public, can?
Sure, you go for campaign reform, campaign finance reform, campaign reform. Change the time that the primaries take place, where they take place, when they take place. You are not alone.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who absolutely agree with that, and then coming from the other side, I can tell you from personal experience in this campaign that if you get in it too late, you're going to lose, because there's a lot of work that you have to do. And I know that from personal experience. But the other thing I would also add, and I don't know if we have a constitutional lawyer in the House tonight, but I suspect that a constitutional lawyer would tell you that you cannot restrict the amount of time people campaign unless you fundamentally change the system, like to a parliamentary system or something like that, because it's free speech in essence. I know we had a couple more questions over here on this side.
Right here.
I'm Scotty Lingelbach. I was wondering, I think it's probably because of the terribly close elections the last several times, but it seems to me more and more money is being poured in the battleground states now. And don't you feel you get kind of a free benefit nationally from that with television and the internet, that the campaign ads that are made really for those states show up otherwise?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, don't you feel that you get a free override from the campaign ads that are made to go into the battleground states, which I think most all of them are being made to do right now, and that with the television and the internet, we see them coming up. But believe me, in red Kansas, they're not being made to run in Kansas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think Scotty's question is, you know, we're sitting here in the middle of Kansas. Now, I live over in the Kansas City media market, so I see all the commercials because they're running Missouri. But if you're sitting in the middle of Kansas, if you're sitting here or in Wichita, unless you're watching Kansas City, you're not seeing any commercials on your local TV stations, but you are seeing the cable networks and on the internet. Everybody has those commercials. I think, Scotty, your question was, isn't that kind of like one way that campaigns are effectively utilizing advertising to get their message out nationally, even though they're only paying for it in those limited target states?
Well, that's
true.
That's pretty smart on somebody's part if they're able to do that and can get and buy local and get a much bigger spread than what you would be able to get otherwise. That's pretty smart, in my opinion, to be doing that.
Okay. We have a couple more questions here. Back of the room, Peter.
We talk about all the money that's given. We never talk about the people that are making all the money, making the ads, actually getting the money when you buy advertising. There's lots of newspapers, TV networks. They all make a lot of money off of this stuff. And you guys raise the money, our congressmen and senators raise the money to pay these people that. And they have a vested interest in the fact that they do not want campaign reform too much because they're going to make less money. It's got nothing to do with the issues or anything. It's a money issue. And for those of us that give a lot of money and been involved in this from the standpoint of giving the money, I really am curious to see what you all, who are the fundraisers, think about the people that use your money and the fact that you're raising money for them to make money.
I guess at first blush, I think that, and I can't state this definitively, but advertising agencies, let's just take them as an example. They're paid to do all kinds of things by all kinds of clients all over the country. Sonic, Burger King, McDonald's. That's their business, and they charge a certain fee
17.5%.
That business.
And they don't care whether it's a political campaign or a business. And if you're gonna compete in the marketplace,
right,
you're going to pay that rate. I have rarely, I can't count on my hand, if I can count even two fingers, where a campaign has been successful in getting an advertising agency to cut their rates.
No, but I think I would take it one step further and look at television and what they charge for advertising. Everyone hears the numbers of Super Bowl advertising. I mean, I love watching them because I love watching the ads. But they charge double, triple, all of the rates go way up. That's what's disturbing to me. I mean, advertising agencies are running a business like anyone else. I suppose you could say the same thing about television, but I mean, between the two of our responses, I think there's some area for maneuvering there, but I don't sense a huge irresponsibility on the parts of the advertising agencies.
And I would say in response to that, I don't think in any campaign, at least later in my career, the last 10 years, I don't think I ever paid an agency what they ask for. I think I always
That's
cut it
true.
down dramatically.
You're right on the agency part. It's the advertising part that you
Yeah.
don't change your rates on.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. I have a question right here.
As fundraisers, it's not something that you graduate from college and you say, oh, I want to grow up and be a fundraiser someday. It's not like you set out to be a doctor and you're a doctor. As you found yourselves in these careers as being professional fundraisers, what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out as far as aligning themselves and doing the right things and making the connections if they were to make this, say, a career here in Kansas or a career nationally?
I mean, you're a person who's interested in potentially becoming a full. I'm holding this up because I can't see with the light, but becoming a fundraising person on the professional side, is that? My personal opinion is, and it's kind of the path that I took. I would look for some way to try to get the sound fundraising principles embedded in your process on the educational side. It was very helpful to me in going into a situation and looking for fundraising opportunities to be able to say that I had had educational background in how to best be a fundraiser and all the different elements that are involved in fundraising. If there's some way that you can find a process where you can learn as much as you possibly can about the professional side of fundraising, and maybe you can be interning somewhere, you can be in a whether it's political or charitable fundraising, to get involved, and you can be involved, but at the same time try to educationally learn everything that you can about the fundraising process. Go to seminars where fundraising is being discussed and taught. The National Association of Fundraisers in Washington has ongoing schools and different opportunities where you can do that. And I'd say 80% of the people in the business don't do that. But I think you have a real leg up on the process if you can learn as much as you can about the fundraising opportunities before you actually get thrown into the middle of a campaign or something like that. That's fun too, but you're much better off if you can take the time and learn as much as you can about how to professionally do things the right way. That'd be my first advice.
What I would add to that is, people love people who are willing to go ask for money. I mean, they want you. And so I think if you look at something like a nonprofit or something like the Nature Conservancy or the Bob Dole Institute or something, if you go to them and say, hey, I'm really interested in raising money, someone will mentor you. Someone will embrace you at some level. In terms of what I think you can do with it is, I've been raising money for politics for a long time, and then I worked on a project for a friend of mine, and I did it on a straight commission basis because they were trying to raise money for a film at the Smithsonian that was on the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And I thought this would be the easiest thing in the world. $3 million, apple pie. I mean, how much more apple pie can you get than that? It took me 5 years to raise the money. It was just no, for a whole variety of reasons. But finally figured it out. But as a result of that, I decided I wanted to continue fundraising for small films and documentaries. And you just position yourself as that. The background that Wyatt's suggesting is absolutely, it's not critical, but it certainly is important, gives you a leg up. But people love you if you want to raise money.
Don't you guys think that that we talked about the challenges that they have? They're held accountable every day. Fundraisers are, whereas those of us who work on the political side, we get kind of one day of reckoning, on election day. And heck, if you lose, the thing falls apart, and you
on
leave.
To the next
one. You go on to the next one. Don't you think, guys, that for a young person that a fundraising career path is a wonderful opportunity because it's very challenging, it's very rewarding, and not that many people want to go into it?
That's no question.
And again, you meet everyone. you meet people on the street, but you meet the bankers, the lawyers, the accountants, the owners of businesses. In most jobs, it would take you years to build up that kind of a cadre. So I think it's great.
Are you close to getting out of school? And
Actually, I have a job fundraising already.
oh, good. Well, I have a son that graduated 2 years ago from college.
You'd like him to meet her?
No, I didn't hear you. What did you say?
You'd like him to meet her?
No, that probably might not be a bad idea. I don't know. But he immediately wanted to go into the fundraising process and went to work for the Republican Party of Virginia and was involved there, has just come back, decided to come back to Washington and is actively seeking fundraising opportunities in the Washington area. And I think if it's something you have an interest in, you should pursue it because it is a very rewarding. A lot of failures. Were you in the earlier discussion we had? No. If you're fearful of failure, it's not a business you want to be in, because on any given day you're not gonna reach the goals and objectives. Long range, you'll meet those goals, and the project will end up being fine in most cases. But there are going to be situations where you're going to say, "Jesus, is it really worth having to deal?" But the bottom line is, it's a great thing to do, and particularly the key thing is making certain it's a cause or a candidate or an issue that you personally feel comfortable in being a part of, and then that becomes the spark that allows you to do what you have to do on a daily basis to raise the funds, given that you have a plan that clearly defines what the money is going to be spent for, and you can go out and convince people to purchase that product. It's a sales job, really.
And I'll share one other little secret with you. In other than presidential campaigns that I worked in, finance directors who worked for me, who reported to me, almost always made substantially more money than I did. And it was because I was willing to pay them if they could meet my budget. And they were held very accountable for that. But it's a great opportunity for you, and I'd encourage you to go that route. Well, I want to. Oh, we have one. This will be our last question over here.
Principles of political fundraising and charitable fundraising the same?
Are the principles?
How you do it?
Yeah.
You mean the process of raising the money, not the principles of the organization or what?
No. The fundraising itself. Is there a difference in political fundraising and charitable fundraising?
Timing, and there are factors that might be different, but in my opinion, the key to any successful fundraising effort depends on the plan, the business plan, or plan that's put in place that clearly defines where the money is going to be spent and what it's going to be spent for. So I look at it to a large degree like a business. If you're starting a business, you're starting a fundraising campaign, you need to know where the money is going to be spent so that when you go to solicit funds with your volunteer people who are going to be doing that, they can say, we know you have the capacity to give a certain amount of money. These are the items that need to have funding, and your $1,000 will cover this, or pay for this, or $10,000 will do a week's worth of get out the vote. But something that if you go to your best friends, you can ask for money, you might get it. But when it gets beyond your best friends, and that circle gets pretty small when you're talking about raising the kind of money it takes today to raise money for congressional and senatorial campaigns, you've got to be able to say why you need the money. That's my personal feeling about it.
I think also you'll find when you're raising money for social causes, the people are pretty sophisticated in terms of saying what percentage of my money is going to X. So they know what those numbers should be, or they have a figure in their mind. They are very careful about that, especially when you get it with big groups like American Red Cross or AMA or American Cancer, any of those. They want to know what percentage is going towards what you say it's going towards, and it's a accounting challenge. But people are pretty sophisticated.
Okay. Barbara?
Before closing, I just want to remind you on the back of your program that we have Debate Watch here at the Institute Friday the 26th for the first presidential election. We'll also begin our civic engagement and Election 2008 activities from September the 26th through October the 15th. We have about 5 to 10 different student organizations involved, all in the civic engagement process. Also, just want to remind you that there's a program Wednesday, October the 1st, Trainwreck, the end of the conservative revolution, and that's on the back as well. And for Wednesday, October the 8th, 1 month out, strategist look at Obama and McCain. Would also like just to ask Joe Gaylord to please stand, and he is our Republican fellow here, and this afternoon for our study group, his guest was Wyatt Stewart. And in a case like this, we have it for the study group, but then we get the opportunity to also hear from his guest as well. So we thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Bill Lacey to close out.
Okay, thank you, Barbara, for adding those notes. The only thing I'd like to do is thank you again for joining us tonight, and I'd ask you to please join me in thanking Jackie and Wyatt for a terrific program this evening. Thank you very much, guys.